Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday Night Smite podcast. A podcast with a host spicier than Gap Jungle. And yeah, I'm the host. My name is the Robbie Dog, by the way, and I'm here today with Sabo, of course. And today we're doing episode 18, and we're going to be recapping everything that happened in the fall split in week 3. So yeah, I think there's nothing else to do in the introduction, so let's head right into the main topic that we have at hand, which is, as I said, it's going to be week 3. And let's start with the EU side again. We're gonna do everything a bit quicker this week because we might not have too much time, and there's another big topic to discuss. So we're just gonna go over the big sets that we thought happened, and one of those were both of the sets that Rivals played, right?
Oh yeah, if you didn't catch it this weekend, Rival was able to pick up their first 2 points of the split. But we're through 3 weeks now, and they only have 3 splits or 3 games left, and they're only setting at 2 points. They were able to split this week with Valence, which we both think is in that fight for that 3 and 4 spot at Super Regionals. And then they split with Poppies, who are looking better this split, but are still the Poppies.
Yeah, and I said going into the split, right, that I thought Poppies had the potential to be better than Elevate, which has sort of been disproven now, especially because they also had the head-to-head between those 2 teams, where Elevate beat them 2-0 fairly convincingly. And yeah, losing games to Poppies, if you're a rival, it's not something you can really afford to do right now, and it's not something you can afford to do as a team that is trying to be a top team anyway, right?
I don't know if they're a top team anymore. I mean, they've completely fallen apart this split. It's we talked about it in the summer, how it looked like Deathwalker was the star of the team, and the other 4 were role players, like really good role players. They've lost that completely so far. And okay, look at the early part of their schedule. They got Dig, and then they got Obey. And okay, you expect them to maybe split with them, but it's most likely going to be a 2-0 for the other team. But coming into this week, where they have a easier schedule, you expect them to 2-0 Poppies and 2-0 Valence.
Yeah, I think 2-0ing Poppies was definitely something that I was expecting, right? I think Valence could have come down to a split, even though I was expecting the 2-0 for Rival as well. But I'm not sure if it's necessarily that they're that much worse, right? If we compare them to the summer split, where they ended up splitting, I think, with both Obey and not with Dig. I think they still got 2-0 by Dig back then, right?
I believe so, yeah. But
yeah. So my point is, right, I don't think they're looking too much worse. I think they're just a bit worse, and it's leading to them getting 2-0'd by a team like Obey, and to them dropping a game to a team like Poppies. And it's not like it was necessarily a blowout against Poppies, right? They tried to run this late game comp with the Kali as sort of one of their main carries, and it just didn't work out. And it was because Ice Ice just wasn't able to carry hard enough, and
that mainly had to do with the mobility of the Poppies composition in that first game against the Kali jungle. You're not going to run down a Jingwei. She can get out. You got the Gep to protect. Put shields on whoever she goes on, and I believe it was Mr. Nazer played Toph that game as well.
Yeah.
He has a dash, and that can create space, and if that wall is down, it creates more space. I understand the Kali pick, as she is a late game hyper carry, probably one of the only 2 gods in the game that are true late game hyper carries. The other one being Jibalanke, but just the mobility that Poppies had drafted in that game really, really hurt the Kali, and she wasn't able to get resets, and Ice Ice was just out of position because he couldn't get the resets. But Back to my earlier point though, they have 2 points with 3 splits or 3 sets left to go.
Yeah, so they can get 9 more points.
They got energy though. They got to play energy.
Yeah.
Which after this week, and energy looks to be back to maybe not world's form, but back to being a one of the top 3 in EU. Who else they got? Burrito. I think they have a set against Burrito.
Yeah, they've got Burrito and Elevate as well.
And Elevate.
See, what I think is, if you look at that schedule they have ahead of themselves, it could be anywhere between 3 and 7 points right now.
I agree.
And I think I'm trending towards around 5 points for them, assuming they 2-0 Burrito, which they absolutely should, and they split with both Elevate and Energy.
Well, that knocks them out of Super Regionals right there, because Elevate already has 7 points, and a split with Elevate would put Elevate at 8 points right now, and you're saying 5 points for Rival, that's 7. So Elevate's already ahead of them. Energy's going to be ahead of them, and Obey and Dig are already, they should already be in Super Regionals realistically. The Rival has put themselves in a bad position, and it's really been, at least in my point of view, the team. And it's not one player, it's the entire team. Deathwalker has not looked like Deathwalker. He has not played well so far this split. Ice can't get anything going. Wolfie has just looked... It used to be if you gave Wolfie Raw, or if you left Raw open for Wolfie, then he could carry the game on it. And now nobody is afraid of that Raw. And then they're just letting it through and banning out top pick. Like more prevalent picks in the meta right now. And he's really struggling. And then Vote, what can you say about Vote? That just... We talked about him in the summer being a very solid hunter, and just he's not going to be flashy. He's not going to be, one of the top hunters, but he's going to be in that middle of the pack hunters, and is just going to be a solid lane for you over there in that lane. But looking at the team as a whole, they've just not looked good so far.
Yeah, I think we've seen signs of good things from a lot of the players still, right? I don't think all hope is lost just yet. I think they have a potential to 2-0 Elevate if they actually get 2 games in a row for once. But yeah, I think you've got a point when you say that Deathwalker hasn't looked as good as he used to, right? We were sort of considering him to be one of the best solo laners in the world, potentially even the best one in the summer, and he's not looked like that so far in this split. And Ice, I think, has had the biggest drop so far. I think Wolfie, a lot of the struggle he's been facing, I think, have been down to Ice as well, just not being as potent right now. And I think it's been the core issue for Rival, is that Ice is not getting enough done. And obviously, the last time that happened was really when they had a sub in for Deathwalker. So I would argue both of those are connected, right? Deathwalker not having the same lane dominance he's usually had is hurting Ice. It's hurt him in the past, and I think this is another example of that as well.
I'm just going to come out and say it. In all honesty, Creed looked like the better solo laner in that set.
Well, he's been getting better.
Yes, but when did you ever think you would say Creed was better than Deathwalker?
Oh well, comparing their respective levels in the summer.
Just the set,
I wouldn't have thought.
Not overall. Not overall, just the set.
Yeah, well, it's one set, right? Right, performances vary between sets, and I think the set against Poppies was one of the worst sets that Deathwalker had, where he just didn't seem like he was having any real impact there. Not necessarily that he was playing poorly, right? Just not getting enough of an impact. And I think, yeah, I think overall Creed might have looked better. And I don't think overall he's a better solo laner, right? And that's why I'm not too worried about Deathwalker still.
Well,
I think especially because Deathwalker really turns it on when it comes to LAN.
again, I'm not saying that Creed is the better overall solo laner. I'm saying for this set, he looked like the better solo laner. And
Yeah.
what I'm trying to guess what I'm trying to get at here is we never thought we would be able to say that at any point in time. At least not this season.
Yeah, well,
I
think
Creed. That is how far Deathwalker has struggled. That's how much Deathwalker has struggled in this split.
Yeah, and it is a bad sign, right? Obviously, but I don't think it's the end of the world just yet. I think if they manage to 2-0 Elevate, they still have hopes for Super Regionals. Because Elevate's schedule, from what I know, is going to be a tough one still. They're going to be facing Rival and, let me check, Obey and Valence. Those are 3 good teams and 1 very good team. So if they don't gain many more points, which could be the case, Rival still has a shot, right? Rival can gain 7 more points if they 2-0 Elevate, especially. And at that point, they can overtake them.
We have to see more than what we've seen from them so far. Nothing they've done so far this split has told me that they could do that.
See, I think in the games that they've won, they have looked good enough to pull off something like that.
Well, they've won 2 games.
Yeah, and they've been on the uptrend, right? They are on an uptrend. The 2 games they won were last week.
I realistically have to see more from this team before I put them into Super Regionals, because the way it's going right now and the way that they're playing, I'm not sold on it. And for a team to fall, a team that goes to the summer finals at DreamHack and takes Dignitas to all 5 games, to see where they're at right now, how far they have fallen. If it doesn't change, if something doesn't change, I don't see them making the league in season 5.
Really? You think they're gonna lose 6th spot?
Well, Burrito's already given. Burrito's out.
Yeah. So you have Poppies left.
Like, something weird can happen there, but Burrito is almost out of it. So that's nearly a given. You look at the other 3 teams, not including Energy, Dignitas, or Obey. You look at the other 3 teams, Valence, Elevate, the Poppies.
Yeah.
All three are playing better this split than they did last split. All 3 of them can realistically clinch 3, 4, 5, and 6, or well, not 3, 4, 5, but 4, 5, and 6, and that puts Poppies out of the league next year, or not, that puts Rival out of the league next year.
I do not see Poppies taking the 6th spot from them, to be honest. Poppies have 2 sets left. One is against Dig, and one is against Burrito. So Burrito should be an easy 2-0, right? But we've seen Poppies lose to them in the past. Could happen again, easily. And Rival's also facing Burrito anyway, so it should be an equalizer, right? They should both get the same amount of points, at least, from those teams, if not Rival getting more. And they're not going to win a game against Dig. I would be very surprised if that was to happen. Whereas Rival still has chances to make points, right? They have chances against Energy and both Energy and Elevate. And I think if you look at that, I don't see a way that Rival loses the 6th spot to Poppies right now.
Well, listen to this. Poppies and rival both 2-0 Burrito, and then neither of them pick up any more points. Elevate and Energy both 2-0 rival. Dignitas 2-0's Poppy. They're both setting at 5 points with a split head to head. Then you're looking at other tiebreaker scenarios, and that's their records against the other teams, or what they did against like the other teams that are ahead of them.
Yeah.
Say Poppies, say rival, but lose 2-0 to Dignitas or to Energy and to Elevate. That means they have no wins against the top 4 teams, and they split with fans. Poppies split with Energy. That would give them the tiebreaker.
So
that would put Poppies.
I just looked at the rules for tiebreakers. Two-way tiebreakers, the only thing that matters is head-to-head. If there is still a tie after head-to-head, which there would be in this case, obviously, they will play one game against each other. So it could come down to that.
Yeah, and if it comes down to that, I mean, who knows what can happen. Yeah. Rival could very well be looking at the 7th spot and being out of the league next season.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. But that is if they don't pick up any points against both Energy and Elevate, which I sort of expect them to to do. So I'm still not too worried.
Wouldn't it be crazy if they actually split with Burrito too?
It would, yeah, but I don't see it happening. And again, I think it's more likely that Poppy split with Burrito than it is that Rival splits with them. So yeah. I think they're in a weird position right now, right? Potentially dropping to 7th place or still making it to Super Regionals if everything goes really well for them.
Everything has to go their way.
Right, we know this team. We've seen them perform well in the past, even online. And I think I still see the potential. I still see that they could do it the split, I think. And in that case, I can see them still potentially getting 9 points. And if that happens, they're just going to be in Super Regionals. Doesn't matter.
Oh, I agree. If they get 9 points and they win out, they're going to be in Super Regionals. I don't think they get 9 points. I think the most they get right now is probably 4 points. That's a 2-0 of Burrito and a split with Elevate. And let's not forget that Elevate embarrassed them last split. That was with a substitute for Deathwalker, but the substitute wasn't really the reason they lost that set so poorly. Ice Baby was handled by Cherio and by Nulissa. And they would not let him get going. And if Elevate does that again with Cherio and what's his name now?
Death Panther.
Death Panther, yeah. If they do that again and Ice Baby is not able to get anything going, well, it's over. Like, Rival's season is over. Because I don't think, they got the gauntlet after this, but if you're the 7th place team coming into the gauntlet, you got to beat 3 other teams. Well, I mean, you're not Burrito, and have to beat 4 other teams, but you got to beat 3 other teams. You got to beat whoever wins the 8th versus the Challenger Cup team, and then you got to beat 6, and then you got to beat 5.
Well, yeah. I think, but we've seen them do that in the past, right? It was on LAN, of course, but I still think they have the potential to do that, and I see them doing that if it comes to this. And then once we get to LAN, I still expect this team to transform into a beast and just make worlds regardless of what happens.
If they make it to LAN, I believe they do make it to Worlds. Question is are they going to make it to LAN? And I realistically don't see them making it to LAN this split, not after the start they've had.
I still think they can turn it around. I expect them to, honestly.
I think they play on Thursday, right?
Let me check real quick. They do not. They're playing on Saturday against Elevate.
So that should be a telling set.
Yeah.
If Elevate can 2-0 them, or if they find a split, that could be the end of Rival.
Yeah. We'll have to see, honestly. I'm just not convinced yet that all hope is lost for them. But it's certainly going to be tough, like we said. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Rival?
I think we've pretty much said all we can say.
Yeah.
We're obviously in a disagreement. You think that if they play well, they can make it. I do too, but I don't see them playing well. But you see them playing better than they have. Yeah, so I don't.
Yeah. I like what I saw in their wins, and I think if they manage to capture their form, and I think when things get tough, this is a team that's going to capture a good form. They can make it. And right now, it's really tough for them, right? Right now, they're really under pressure. Before this week, everything was still open for them. If they had gone out of this week with 4 points by winning against either Poppies or Valence 2-0, things would have still looked good. Right now, things look bad because they only got 2 points this week. But I still can see them getting more points than that going into the next week and going into week 5 as well. So that's my entire reasoning behind it, really.
In my entire reasoning behind not thinking that they're going to make it, the 3 teams that they're chasing, Energy, Elevate, and Valence, all have like 6 or 7 points right now. So they've all got a pretty significant lead on this Rival team. Not only does Rival have to win a lot of their oncoming games, but they have to have those teams lose. So,
well, 2 of them.
You're asking. Rival has put themselves in a bad position. Even if they win out, they can't. They realistically can't make it if the other teams can win out as well. So it's going to be really tough, and I don't see them doing it. I don't see them pulling it off. You're asking too much from the rest of the league. Your fate is not in your hands.
Yeah, it's in the hands of Obey and Dig for the most part. Because if you look at the rest of the schedule for other teams, you look at Valence, who they have left to face is Valence, Dig, and Elevate themselves. And you look at Elevate, the teams they have left to face are Poppies and Valence and Obey. Again, those are strong teams, right? They're even going to take points off of each other, Elevate and Valence. And then you look at Energy. Energy probably has the easier road out of all of those, because they're still going to be facing Burrito, and they're going to be facing... who are they facing? Rival directly as well in the last week. So I think they have a tough schedule ahead of themselves. Rival still can decide things as far as it comes to energy, right? Because energy only has 2 sets left, or that doesn't. They have more than 2 sets left, I think. I'm not.
Yeah.
So energy's also gonna be facing Obey still. So I think it depends on how Obey and Dig both perform, right? Because we've seen those teams be very good so far this split, and if they continue to have that sort of form and manage to 2-0 those teams, it puts Rival into a good position. Still.
Which we've done said that the Rival and the Elevate set this weekend is huge.
Yeah, of course it is.
Depending on what happens there, if Elevate and Valence becomes even bigger. Because if Energy wins out and makes it to that third spot, if Elevate can somehow find a 2-0 over Valence, or Valence can find a 2-0 over Elevate, if they don't split, then Rival season is over. Rival's not making it to Super Regionals. They have to 2-0 Elevate this weekend, and they have to hope for a split between Valence and Elevate. Either of those two teams 2-0 the other, then you're looking at Dignitas, Obey, Energy, and then whoever wins that set. Rival will be left out.
Yeah, I can see it.
So, huge sets coming up as we finish off the split.
Yeah, it's only going to be huge sets from now on. It seems like, right? When we talk about who the teams that are going to be facing each other are, there are very few sets left between the bottom 2 and the top 6, and a lot of them left between those top 6 teams that are really competing for the super regional spots. So that's why I'm most excited, right? And that's why I think if a lot of these sets go in favor of the top 2, Rival still has a shot. So we'll have to wait and see. There's not much else to be said, right? Even if one of Valence or Elevate manages to 2-0 the other, they're gonna get to, I think, 10 points, assuming they don't really get any points elsewhere, which in a lot of cases they won't, right? Just looking at the end of the schedule, looking at that the fact that Valence is going to be facing both Dig and Obey still, and Elevate, you can easily imagine Valence not getting any points in the last 3 sets. And you can easily see Elevate, just like that, also only making 3 more points.
And with that being said, though, the only way that Rival finishes above Elevate is if they 2-0 Energy as well, because that puts them at 11 points. Elevate would be at 10. If they don't 2-0 Energy and they can't get those extra 3 points from Energy, then they're sitting at 8 points, and Elevate's the 4th team going into the Super Regionals.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see what you mean, actually. You're right. It's gonna be hard.
Speaking of Energy.
Yeah, they played this week as well.
They played 2 sets this weekend.
Yeah.
After losing game 1 to Dig, they, for lack of the better term, manhandled them in game 2.
Yeah. I think that term captures it fairly well.
Game 2 was in Season 3 Energy stomping. Like that was the 2-time world champs actually playing like they want to win. And they embarrassed probably the best team in the world right now in that game too. They were able to transition that over to 2-0ing Elevate on Saturday.
Poppies. Not Elevate, the 2-0 Poppies.
Oh, They had 2-0 Poppies. My bad. My mistake. I got the symbols wrong.
Pretty sure Elevate 2-0'd them in week 2.
Yeah, they 2-0 them week 2. But that was not. I was speaking wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can't take too much away from the Poppy set, right? Because realistically speaking, it should have been a 2-0 anyway, regardless of, even if it was the energy that we saw in the last 2 weeks. The Dig set, on the other hand, beating them in one game, again, as you said, the best team in the world, which I would absolutely agree with. Beating them in one game and the fashion in which they beat them especially is making things look really good for Energy right now. They seem to have recovered extremely well from how poorly they looked in week 2 and week 1. And it looks like adapting, when he's put on Assassins still, he can still perform well, and the set against Elevate really seemed to be more of an outlier now, looking back at it. So yeah.
Well, adapting in these 3 games that they actually won this week looked like his old self. He looked like the best player in the world. Now, has he lost that title? I believe so. I believe, I want to give that title to Cuvo Fred right now. But adapting really looked like his old form. And just seeing that, if he can bring that the rest of the split, EU's in trouble. Like, the rest of EU is in trouble.
Yeah.
Because adapting was the engine for this Energy team.
Yeah, he's been their best player since really this season, right? Beforehand, he was still, well, let's talk about adapting. He was always, I thought, the best player on Energy. It's never been by quite as much of a margin as it was during this season so far, right? We saw him in the summer being consistently the one carrying games, and Emilito or Yamin would show up from time to time and carry a game as well. Adapting, he has been the main carry of this team, and he has been that thing for the majority of this time in Energy, or for all of it, especially now. And now that he's looking good again, and I still think he's looking much worse on Warriors than he does on Assassins, which is still a point to be worried about, right? But I think if you put him on the Assassin, he's shown this season so far, and this split even, that he can still carry with them, especially looking at this week. And that's what I think Energy should do. I think Energy should look to put him onto Assassin. If you can put Maniac on the Guardians, as we've seen you can, and get the additional front line you're going to need that way, I think this team should have good chances for basically anything there is, right? They just split with the best team in the world. What else is there to say?
Well, I said last week that Yemen was the core of the team. He was the solid part of the team. The one guy on the team that you can look at, and if everybody else is struggling or somebody's not playing up to their level, you can look at Yemen, look at what he's doing, and just be impressed. Like, he wasn't somebody that you would look at and be like, oh God, he's carrying the game, but he wouldn't have a bad game, and the rest of the team can look at him to kind of settle themselves. Adapting is the engine of this car that Energy is. If I'm going to use the car analogy, adapting the engine. If he's on and he's going, the team is almost unbeatable. If he's struggling, like if he hasn't had an oil change, or if a piston is broken or something, if something's wrong with him, then the team doesn't look nearly as good.
Yeah.
And so we saw adapting, like I said, go back to his old self this week. And if he can bring that the rest of the split, then like I said, the rest of EU's in trouble. Forget about Dig and and Rival and Obey and all of EU, all of the entire world, NA, EU, Australia, Latin America, China, Japan, like Eastern Asia. When adapting is on with the players he has around him, Yemen being one of the best mid laners in the world, Emilito being one of the best hunters in the world, Maniac and Raffer being just two really good frontliners that understand what their team wants them to do. If adapting is doing his thing, they're 3-time world champions.
Well, honestly, we would have to see, right? I think Dig and Obey can still give them a run for their money and rival on LAN as well if they get there. Especially if they look anything like they did in the summer, right? In the summer finals. And that's what we will potentially get, right? An on-form energy for the first time since half a year against the likes of a Dig on LAN in potentially a final for the crown of EU or whatever. Yeah. I think this team, if they look anything like they did this week, you're right. They can take games off of the two big EU teams as in Obey and Dig, like we've seen, and if that is the case, they might be able to do the same thing on LAN, and if that is the case, they will compete for Worlds, which is not something I would have really expected looking at how they did in the summer, right? They got 3-0'd by Dig at DreamHack Valencia. Just to clarify that again.
Yeah, and let's not forget that they almost got 2-0'd by Trifecta. So
you will never forget that.
Yeah, I'm not going to forget it because I think they should have got 2-0'd by Trifecta.
Yeah.
You blow a 20,000 gold lead in game 2. Trifecta blows a 20,000 gold lead in game 2.
Is that as bad as
they should have got
whoever losing?
Like,
go ahead.
realistically, Energy should have lost 2-0 to Trifecta.
Yeah.
So, but one more thing before we move on past Energy. I don't know if you saw the Reddit post this week, but we had a comment, and it has to do with Energy. The guy's name is Scythe VX.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know him.
What he said is the reason, and in quotations, I think, or in parentheses, I think Energy does not play as good as they did before, is because they lost their drive. They became world champions twice in a row, and they've already proven themselves. They played well, and the only logical reason for them not playing well is because they don't like playing the game as they used to. At least that's my opinion on it. That's end quote. That's what he said. Now, I was going to reply to him yesterday, but I decided to cover this during the recording. In the spring and summer, that's exactly what it looked like. They looked like they lost their drive. Now, they did get 2-0 by Elevate last week, and this is, he posted this after they 2-0 Elevate. That was before this weekend. I don't see that being the case now. Because if that's the case now, why make the switch to Maniac at all? If you don't want to win, and you don't really care, you've lost that drive, just leave Demi in the solo lane. Realistically, if Maniac thinks that Energy has lost their drive, Maniac doesn't leave Obey. And so, yeah. Scythe, I respect your opinion, and I believe your opinion. If this was the spring or the summer, that makes a lot of sense. But it's the fall. They've made roster changes, and I don't think that is realistically the case anymore. Like I said,
Yeah.
Maniac doesn't leave a team like Obey if energy is not if the rest of the guys on energy do not have that drive to win worlds. And so, thank you for your comment. Keep them coming. We appreciate them, and but respectfully, I've got to disagree with you.
Yeah, yeah. As I said, I know the guy. I play with him a shit ton. Like you wouldn't believe it. So and I've played with him for years now, as well. The reason I'm not buying the entire argument is they've already done it once, right? They won one world championship, and they still had the drive afterwards to do it again, to come back and to look even better, probably going into worlds, into season 3 worlds, or just as good. And if they didn't have the drive, they would have lost it already after the first time, I think. And they would have looked a lot worse in season 3 than they did in season 2. And while they still did to a certain extent, it was never quite like this, right? I don't think this is energy necessarily losing all of their drive. I think this is a combination of them looking worse when not everything is on the line, which it is now, right? That's why I think it's also part of the reason why they've looked good in this week as well. I think it's a combination of that, of them not looking as good when it's a split that doesn't matter, essentially, which spring and summer were. And it's a combination of every other EU team simply getting a lot better. Because, as we said, I think we said in the past that this Obey roster and this Dig roster are arguably better than any NA EU roster outside of Energy in season 3 and season 2 ever was.
I agree. I mean, energy has struggled at times this year. That's clear. But I don't think it is that they lost their drive. I think it's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. The rest of EU has gotten better.
Yeah, and there's no denying that Energy played badly at the start of the splits, and at the start of every split ever, and at the start of this season is most certainly, right. But that doesn't necessarily mean they lost their drive. It's just they're not looking as good going into seasons and into splits as they do towards the end of them. And I think this is another case of that.
But this should all be moot this time, because we both think, after what they did this week, that they should be able to make it to Super Regionals easily.
Yeah. Again, just looking at their schedule, who they have left to face, they're going to get 3 guaranteed points almost from facing Burrito. That should put them into Super Regionals, or at least put them close enough to it. And even then, they're going to be facing Rival. If they manage to take any points off of Rival as well, there's no way Rival themselves are going to overtake them. There's almost no way that both Valence and Elevate manage to get to those 9 points that they would have, considering who they're going to be facing in the last 2 weeks as well, with both Obey and Dig being on their platter. So yeah, their chances for Super Regionals are looking super good right now, and I would definitely expect them to make it.
I would. I'm with you. I would expect Energy to make it quite easily. Probably in that 3 spot.
Yeah, if they manage to take any games off of Obey.
That would probably be the best spot for them right now. The best situation that they could ask for is them being in that 3 spot. So, if we think about it hard, we have 3 of the 4 spots in EU pretty much wrapped up at this point. So yeah, it again, teams like Rival and the Poppies and Elevate and Valence, with Energy basically having this 3 spot on lock, you've got 4 teams fighting over 1 spot. So
Yeah, well, it's more like 3 teams, and Poppies are throwing some punches in there as well. The occasional one. But sure.
Again, if the Poppies can find a surprise 2-0 somewhere, they're right in the middle of this thing.
Well, yeah, if anyone can find a surprise 2-0, then anyone's gonna be in the middle of the thing. But I don't think it will happen. So, I mean, Poppies to get a surprise 2-0 would literally have to 2-0 dig, by the way.
I agree. I agree with you. But to a certain extent, like, if you look at the other 3 teams at names that aren't named Poppies, if they 2-0 somebody, it's not a surprise. Poppies 2-0 somebody, that's a huge surprise.
Yeah, just to explain it again. To explain it again to you, right? Poppies has 2 sets left. One is against Burrito, which a 2-0 would not be a surprise. The other is literally against Dig.
Oh, okay. What if Dig decides, hey, let's put Trickstank in the jungle. We'll put Variety in mid, and we'll just switch everybody up and have fun that match, and they end up getting 2-0 that Poppies.
Well, in that case, I wonder why they would do that in week 4, not week 5. And I hope they enjoy their finds.
How can you find them? I mean, that's not a findable affair.
That's trolling, man. That should be findable.
It's trolling, but you got all 5 members of the roster playing the game, and as long as you're not F6ing before 10 or getting a feeding basket a 4-kill lead in less than a minute and a half.
Shoutouts to Envy. I'm not sure what the rules are, but I could imagine that they would get fined for that. Especially because if they did it, right, it would mostly be just to knock someone else out. Because then, at that point, Poppies might actually make 4th spot. Or make 5th. And if that happens, then, yeah, great. One of the top 4, top 5 teams, or top 6 teams in NA and EU is not going to make it to wildcards even.
Instead of a role swap, let's say Trix plays New Wall support, and you see Variety on maybe Uller solo, and they just do weird gods, and they just do like Geb mid. They just do weird, like the craziest crap you can think of. All of them are playing their spots.
See, if that were to happen, if that were to happen, first of all, I think they might still win against Poppies with that sort of comp. And second of all, if Hi-Risk could even prove in the slightest that they did that they intentionally lost the match, I don't know what they would do, but I imagine they would just be banned. And that's the one scenario in which I can imagine NA winning Worlds, by the way. Gotta get that dig in.
You're gonna be eating your own ass when NA wins Worlds. I'll tell you that now.
Yeah. Well, I like my chances. Anyway, let's move on before we get into more obscenities. The other big thing that happened this week, I think, was Wayland's also picking up 3 points. Did they only play 1 set? Or how many sets did they play?
No, they played 2.
Wait, they didn't get 3 points. They got 4 of them, right? Yeah, they got 4 points. So, Wayland's they free out Burrito, and they split with the Poppies, and no, not with Rival. God damn it. What's going on? So yeah, that's 4 points. Rival.
That's 4 points. So they picked up 4 points this week. They split with Valence, and then they or they split with Rival, and then they 2-0 Poppy, or no, they 2-0 Burrito.
Yeah.
And so the question becomes, and let's not include energy in this. We've done talked about energy probably being in that third spot. Can they beat out Elevate right now for that number 4 spot?
Well, they might. It's gonna come down, I think, mostly to the head-to-head between those two teams, right? Because, as we said, if one of them 2-0s the other, that team's most likely gonna clutch at the 4th spot behind Dig, Obey, and Energy, just because of how the rest of the schedule is set up. Valence might be a team that can still take games off of the top 2, right? If they get really lucky, I think. And in that case, it might not even really come down to that set specifically. But the main set that I expect to determine who goes to Super Regionals are going to be the sets between Burrito and what am I saying? Between Valence, Elevate, and Rival. Those two sets, like we've already talked about one. The other that's going to be most relevant that we've already touched on as well is going to be Valence against Elevate, and whoever wins that should be able to clutch the 4th spot, assuming everything else goes according to plan.
Yeah, I think we said it earlier. Even if Rival doesn't 2-0 Energy, even if they win out, they're only going to be looking at 8 points. Whereas both Valence and Elevate have 7 points right now.
And so Valence has 6.
Well, it still stands.
Yeah.
It still stands. If Valence can find a 2-0 over Elevate, they end with 9. If Elevate finds a 2-0 over Valence, they end with 10. Now, Rival could, if Rival finishes with 9 points, by not 2-0ing Energy, or finishes with 8 points by not 2-0ing Energy, and Valence is tied with 8 points by picking up a couple of splits to end the week, it comes back to the head-to-head matches. And again, that's a 1-game playoff to see who gets that 4th spot.
Wait. Let's go over this again. This is going to be really confusing. So, Rival would have 8 points if they 2-0 in 2 sets and get 2-0'd in the other. In that case, they would 2-0 Elevate and Burrito, and they would get 2-0'd by Energy. They would be at 8 points. They would have the head-to-head against Elevate. Just to make that certain, right? And they would they would not have to head-to-head against Valence, but it would be even between the two because they split.
Yeah, go on. They would have the head-to-head against Elevate. So if Elevate, what's Elevate's schedule?
I believe it's Obey, Dig, and Rival.
Burrito. Have they played Burrito already?
Yeah, I think they did. They did in week 1. They 2-0'd them. No, they split with them. Oh.
They split with Rival. Okay.
No, they split with Burrito in week 1.
They split with Burrito.
Yeah. And they're going to be facing Rival, Obey, and Dig. No, Rival, Obey, and Valence, of course. I'm an idiot.
Obey and Valence. Like we said earlier, if Valence and Elevate split, and they're both looking at 8 points,
well,
Rival just Valence is setting at 7 points. Okay, and that's just right now. So if they split, Elevate finishes with 8 points, and Valence finishes with 7 points, and Rival does not 2-0 Energy, they finish 8 points, and they have the head-to-head against Elevate, or they would have the head-to-head against Elevate if they pick up 6 points and not beat Energy, because Elevate's one of the two teams that they would have 2-0 for those. So they would finish with 8, and they would be tied with Elevate. The head-to-head would go to Rival because they have the head-to-head with Elevate.
Yeah.
If they don't split though, they can get to that spot. They both, Rival's on the outside looking in. Valence finishes with 9. Elevate finishes, if they 2-0 Valence, they finish with 10 respectively, and Rival's out.
Yeah.
So the head-to-head matchup between Valence and Elevate is probably the most important match for Rival.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is going to be, by the way, this is going to be really, really hyped up. Week 5, right? The first game on Saturday is going to be Elevate against Valence. Assuming they're both still on 7 and 6 points respectively at that time, and assuming that Rival is sitting on 8 themselves, if one of them 2-0s, Rival is going to be playing straight after against Energy. And they're going to have to 2-0 to make it to Worlds, to make it to Super Regionals.
Yes, that's right. Because even if they pick up a split with Energy, and Valence beats Elevate to finish with 9 points, then that head-to-head matchup is split, and they have to play another one-game playoff to see who gets into Super Regionals.
Well, the head-to-head's not going to be split, right? It's just going to be... You're just going to have Elevate having more points. Elevate's going to have 10 points compared to Rivals.
But if Valence beats Elevate, and makes it to 9, and Rival does not 2-0 Energy and finishes with 9.
Oh, yeah.
Valence and Rival have split this past week, so that they would be tied in the head-to-head, and they'd have to play each other one more time for a one-game playoff to see who gets into Super Regionals.
Well, at that point, you might also just be looking at Energy not making it anymore, because Energy would have 8 points or 9 points, assuming that they either split or lose to Rival in the last week, right? And assuming they don't take any games off of Obey. So we could have a three-way tie between Valence, Energy, and Rival for third place.
And so Elevate can still make it to the third place team.
Yeah, well, assuming that Energy doesn't take any game off of Rival, and and also doesn't take any game off of Obey. Do you know what I mean?
There's a lot of moving parts left.
Yeah, we'll have to look again after next week.
There's a lot of moving parts left.
Yeah.
So,
again, if we assume that Energy takes a game off of Obey and beats Rival 2-0, they're going to be third. Almost certainly.
is that the only 2 games Energy has left?
No, they also have Burrito, but who cares?
Well, if they 2-0 Burrito, wouldn't that just put them?
No, I was already including Burrito in the calculations, right? So assuming they 2-0 Burrito, they are at 8 points at that point. Assuming they get 2-0 by Obey, they're still at 8 points. Assuming they split with Rival, they're at 9 points. Assuming Rival 2-0s both Burrito and Elevate, and splits with Energy, of course, they would also be at 9 points. Assuming Valence 2-0s Elevate and loses both of their sets against Dig and Obey, they would also be at 9 points.
And then Energy has what? 2-0? Did they split or 2-0 with Valence?
I believe they split
with Valence.
Yeah.
Split with Valence and
so we would have a three-way tie.
Valence and Rival would have split, and then Rival and Energy would have split. So we would have a true 3-way tie.
For third place, yeah.
for fourth place.
Third.
Yeah, for third and fourth place.
Yeah, for third, fourth,
So,
and fifth place.
well, the third and fourth spots are the only ones that matter, right? Those are
Yeah.
the two that are going to separate us. Then we're going to have that same situation we had at the end of relegations, where you get 3 extra games, everybody plays each other once, and the 2 best that come out of that, the teams that get the 2 wins are the ones that finish third and fourth. So, yeah, it'll be relegations all over again. Just they'll basically play a 3-game play-in, and whoever gets to 2 wins, whichever 2 teams get the 2 wins first are the teams that make it.
Yeah, that's basically it. Well, the official rules are that if there is a three-way tie, you're going to have 1 game played between each of the teams. So, 3 games, obviously. And if the tie still remains, they're going to do a single elimination bracket with 1 team getting a bye into the final match. So that team would then already be qualified for Super Regionals.
But then how would they go about deciding who gets the bye?
It would be randomized at that point.
Damn.
So yeah, you get that's basically, just imagine you get into Super Regionals with a coin toss.
That's basically what it is.
That's basically old school European football rules.
Oh boy.
That's a nice piece of trivia, by the way. In football, way back in the day, I think at the very start of the World Championship in football or something, the way games would be resolved is you would have an overtime with golden goal. If there was no winner after the overtime, you would do a coin toss to determine the winner. Just let that sink in.
All right, well, enough with the second tier league. Let's move on to the best.
Oh,
The best. Let's move on to the best part of the SPL. That's NA.
Yeah. Let's discuss what is going to happen in EU in week 4. No, let's move on to NA. Seriously. So yeah. Well, first big set that we have on the list to discuss, because obviously we can't discuss all of them, is the set between LG and Space Station. So yeah, what happened?
Well, the 2 teams ended up splitting on Thursday. They were the only North American set on Thursday because of the Mighty Storm dilemma that rose up. The E United and Mighty Storm got postponed till Sunday, and so LG and Space Station ended up playing their set and ended up splitting with each other. And then they both 2-0'd on Sunday. So what I get out of this split is that they're both fairly even matchup for each other.
Yeah.
Zapman and Barracuda, the Zapman and Barracuda head to head it's always fun to watch. Andister and Paskin and Mask and Homie Faye and Aquarius and Scary D. I mean, they looked like mirror images of each other. SSG kind of dominated game 2 after losing to Luminosity in game 1, which was a much closer game than game 2 was. But at the end of it all, they looked like they were close to each other in play level. And Space Station's supposed to be the super team, and they just they're starting to catch that stride, and they did beat Space, or they did beat the Gatekeepers. They did beat was it Allegiance? And
Yeah,
then
it was. I believe it was. Yeah.
they've split with LG, which LG was undefeated up until this set. And so with the set against E United being the outlier for Space Station, they look like they're close to each other. Like they're very, very close to each other. I think LG has 9 points right now, and Space Station Gaming has 7. But LG
That
has
would
not
be
played.
correct. Yeah.
LG has not played E United yet. So there you go. Like they are pretty much neck and neck. Pretty much like the same. They're in the same position. So the question I'm going to ask you about this is, which of these two teams is the better team? In your eyes, which of the two teams is going to be in that number 2 spot in North America?
See, that depends on when you're asking me. If you're asking me right now, I think it's too close to tell. What I will say though is I think Space Station still has more potential, and maybe not on LAN, but online, they still have more potential. Right? They are a super team. They're still growing together. We saw how bad they looked in week 1. We saw how good they looked in this week and in week 2 already. And if you look at this roster now, they have a shit ton of potential just because of the names that they have on this team, right? They have Homie Effie. They brought in Satman, one of the best hunters in NA, to replace Vicium, an average hunter, I'd say. They brought in Scary to replace FinoK. Scary, a Saurian with a lot of potential as well, which seems to have been sort of unlocked by joining this roster again, because he's able to play a bit more freely, it seems. This team, as you said, is a super team. Super teams, they work on two things. They work on, first of all, just raw skill of the individual players, which this team has, right? They have some of the most skilled players in their individual roles. Right? We talk about Homie Effie single-handedly carrying teams to LAN because of how good he is online. We talk about Chicks always being in a discussion for best support in NA since Season 2, I'd say, or Season 3 at least. We talk about Satman and Barracuda always battling for top 1 in NA. And we talk about Andy and Baskin now having settled into the mid-role and being some of the best mids in NA as well. And if you look at that, the Space Station roster should have more potential just based on raw skill. The second thing a super team needs is synergy, and synergy is going to naturally build itself. And it seems like that is happening for Space Station right now. They've looked better going from week to week so far. And I think if that trend continues, which I expect it will, they will be the more scary team at the end of the split. Just the issue is going to be, after the split, they're going to go into LAN. And at LAN, if Homie Effie doesn't show up, it's not going to even matter.
Yeah, because that's the point, right? Even if Space Station takes the number 2 spot and goes into Super Regionals with that number 2 spot, they're most likely looking at LG in that 3rd spot. And as we know how matches line up, it's 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3. Meaning Space Station and LG will play the 5-game set first, with the winner making it to Worlds. And with Homie Face struggling at LAN, the head-to-head matchup right now online if it looks as close as it is right now, if it continues to be this close, and Space Station wins the number 2 spot, with LG finishing right behind them in that number 3, then this discussion is completely, pointless, because we're going to get our answer. LG and SSG will be playing at Super Regionals against each other.
Yeah.
And that's the point. If that's the case, can Zapman, Annister, Scary D, and Jigs overcome Homie Faye's struggles? Because let's remember last year where Hurrywind, Benji, Vedium, and Shadowcube couldn't overcome his struggles on that Flashpoint roster that made it to, or the Denial roster, because they were only Flashpoint for that one weekend. But on the Denial roster that made it to Super Regionals last year, they couldn't overcome Homie Face struggles. So that's the point. Like that's the key. That's the key. If even if Space Station finishes in that number 2 spot, they're looking at LG facing LG in the first round of Super Regionals.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I'm putting LG ahead of Space Station, regardless of how they finish the online portion of the split.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to Homie Effie, and the team is looking like they will be better on LAN, right? We've talked about it already, how one of the big issues they had last split was they had one carry in Homie Effie, sort of, and Anninster as a sort of, in sort of conjunction with him, obviously, because mid and jungle synergy is very important. If you have additional carries now in the form of Scary D and in the form of Satman in both of the side lanes, and this team has a lot more carry potential, and we've not really seen that yet. I think Satman's not looked terrific so far, and I think Scary's had good sets so far, good games more specifically, but nothing too crazy yet. I think if they manage to show up for LAN, which again with Scary it's not that unlikely, he's done it in the past, looking back at Season 3 Worlds, then this team has a lot of a better chance at winning against a roster like LG than they would have had with their Summer Split roster. And so there's still reason to be excited about this set on LAN, especially because maybe a magical thing's going to happen and Homie if he's finally going to get over his LAN curse. And even if not, the additional carry potential that they've brought in the form of Scary and Satman could be enough to propel them to a victory over LG, even if Homie doesn't show up in his best form.
I would still lean towards Luminosity in the head-to-head matchup at the LAN.
Yeah,
that best of 5 at the LAN.
Yeah, of course. If you look at it, right, I don't know how many ifs I used to explain the win conditions for Space Station, but it was a lot of them. So betting on them, probably not the best idea.
Yeah, everything you just said, I agree with. Luminosity, the reason I take them in the head-to-head is more because of Mask than it more so in favor of him than it is Scary D struggles, or not Scary D struggles, but Homie Face struggles. If everything else is even, if all the other roles are even, and Jeff and Jigs are top 2 supports in North America, or 2 of the best in North America. We know we've already said the Annister and the Baskin have settled into the mid role. Barracuda and Zapman, that's always fun to watch. They're very, very close, as far as skill level goes. Even if Homie Face shows up at LAN, from what we've seen from Mask in the past, last year's Worlds being probably the one that sticks out most to me, because he did show up outside of Scary D on that LG team that made Worlds last year. Mask was the star, and we've seen it from Mask on LAN. We haven't seen it from Homie Faye on LAN. So I would tend to lean towards Luminosity, even if Space Station has more carry potential now than they did last split.
Yeah, I can definitely see that reasoning. But regardless, it should be an interesting matchup if it ends up happening, and definitely something to look forward to. Yeah. And again, a lot of it's going to going to be determined by Trifecta as well. Obviously, Trifecta, they're not looking like the most solid team right now. Honestly, we're going to talk about them later as well. But if they manage to go into one of those into the first or second spot, right, they're going to take one of them away from either of those teams. And if that is the case, they're going to most likely be facing E United in the semis at Super Regionals. In which case, it's going to be a hard match for either of them.
Yeah, Trifecta is the wild card. They have, Trifecta has only played E United. They still have sets against Space Station and LG left on their schedule. They have struggled recently, but that was they've only played a Mighty Storm, E United, and then this week against the Gatekeepers. So they could recover. It's LG still has a set against E United, so E United 2-0's LG, and Trifecta can somehow recover. LG's looking at playing E United at Super Regionals. So Trifecta's still the wild card, but just letting it go with Luminosity and Space Station, I'll say this one last thing. They fare better right now against each other than they do against E United or Trifecta. So the best case scenario for both of these two teams are if they end up playing each other at Super Regionals. One of them drops to fourth, both teams can be in trouble.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Especially if Trifecta, like you said, if Trifecta manages to pick up their game a bit, then they're probably going to be looking scarier than either of those rosters going into Super Regionals. And at that point, having to face them in the semis as well is going to be trouble for whichever team ends up facing them, obviously. Because they have dropped points along the way so far, Trifecta. They're sitting at 4 right now. They've obviously been 2-0'd by United. They've now... Well, we're going to talk about it pretty soon. They've now dropped one game and split with Gatekeepers. So if they still get ahead of either of those teams, right, either Luminosity or Space Station, it's going to take a lot of wins from them. And if they manage to get those, you're looking at a team that is most likely going to be looking better than either of those rosters, unless Space Station's improvement continues sort of exponentially as their synergy gets built up.
Well, of course, we say again that Trifecta still has their sets remaining against Space Station and Luminosity.
Yeah. Yeah, so if they beat them anyway in the head-to-head, then it's already going to look bad for them anyway.
If Trifecta beats them head-to-head, then yeah, it does look bad for them. And Trifecta will probably get that number 2 spot over both of them. So, yeah, it's again in both scenarios, say Space Station's that number 3 team and LG's that number 4 team. We haven't seen LG play E United yet, but with the way E United is dominating right now, it's going to be hard for Luminosity to find a win or be able to win 3 games against E United, and then just Trifecta with Aurora and Kiki and just the crazy things that they can throw at you and make work. They're a bad matchup for anybody. Like Trifecta is a bad matchup for E United, even though E United 2-0'd them. That was without Snippy.
Yeah,
that's an asterisk there because that was without Snippy. But they did play Raj and Jungle in that, and it was successful to a point. It was successful to a point. He did kind of. Cynosure did have a good early to mid game on the Raj and Jungle before Scream just took him out, and so it's the fact that Trifecta can throw crazy things at you that you're not expecting, kind of like what Eager was able to do in the past, makes Trifecta a bad matchup for everybody.
Yeah.
Even though they're struggling right now. Like I said, Trifecta is still a team's kind of a wild card right now, right? Like, they can pick these crazy stuff and it can work and they can win, or they can pick these crazy stuff and it not work, and now they're looking at, the gauntlet. But
Yeah. And like, especially if you are looking towards LAN, right, they're gonna have time to prepare some more crazy stuff. And if that is the case, then at LAN it's gonna be even harder for either of those teams to really beat them, I think.
so
Yeah.
Trifecta.
Yeah,
We've
we've
already-
talked about them already, so let's move on to what they did this week.
Yeah, we've already brought Trifecta into this. They found a split this week in their one matchup with the Gatekeepers, and I want to say it was a surprise to almost everybody out there, because we both had Trifecta 2-0, and I can't really put my thumb on why the Gatekeepers were able to find a split. I mean, yeah, just thinking back about that game, it was which jungler was able to play better.
Well,
If Grave and Mando Warrior were playing better, the Gatekeepers won. If Cynosure was playing better, Trifecta won. So yeah, that's the only thing I could see. Like, that game that Gatekeepers won, Mando Warrior was controlling that lane against Kiki because of what Grave was able to do. And then on the flip side, when Trifecta in the game that they won, Cynosure ran the team.
yeah, like you can see that just from looking at the slash lines, right? And I think that's what it really came down to, is that solo and jungle matchup when you compare Mando Warrior to Kiki and Grave to Cynosure, and that was the stark contrast between the two games, was really how either of those positions performed compared to the other. And yeah, it really looked like they were running things. The different teams were running different. Were running the solo side of the map in its entirety in either of the matches, right? And I think that's what led to both of them getting a win here. But it was weird. It was not something we really would have expected for this Gatekeepers roster, even though we've been hyping them up a bit as far as them being in contention for Super Regionals potentially is concerned. To really come out swinging like that and being able to completely dominate one side of the map just like that.
And that just goes to credit me more for what I've been saying, that Grave could be one of the best junglers, could be the top jungler in NA in the future, because he is that good. And
yeah.
He 8-2 on Camazots in the first game. Mando Warrior going 5-1 and 10. The left side, that Fire Giant side of the map, was theirs. Like, Kiki and Sino couldn't do anything. And then flip that over. Second game, Kiki 7-0 and 13, and Cynosure 14-1 and 6, and Grave and Mando Warrior can't do anything. And so it seemed like, at least in NA this week, that whichever team could find the win on the Fire Giant side of the map, where the solo and the jungler are winning that. If they win that side of the map, then that team was going to win.
Yeah, and I think that's not necessarily too surprising, right? We know that both teams have a lot of carry potential coming out of the junglers, as you said. Grave looking like a potential superstar in the future, and Cynosure obviously being the one of the main figures behind the success Trifecta's had in the summer. And if you consider that, right, if you manage to run one side of the map completely, like both did in their game, that in the game that they won respectively, giving that much carry potential to your jungler by giving them an early lead to a certain extent is just going to allow them to really snowball the game hard and to just end it fairly early, right? Both of those games didn't go 30 minutes.
No, both of them went just under 30 minutes. Game 1 was just over 24 minutes, and Game 2 was just over 28 minutes. So, yeah, if again, and we saw this in the 2E United sets. If they won, if the solo jungle won their side of the map, then they won the game. And so again, we see it here as well. You said Cynosure was one of the reasons why Trifecta was so successful in the summer. Yeah. And when we see him struggle like he did in Game 1 against Pain or against Grave and Mando Warrior, then we see him lose that side of the map and Gatekeepers winning the game.
Yeah. I think that sums it up really, right? And like that is not too surprising to me. Just the fact that they would lose if that were to happen. The surprising factor was that it did happen. Because honestly, yeah. I was not expecting Trifecta to really falter against a team like Gatekeepers, even though they are a good team, right? We were still expecting them to be quite far behind those top 4 NA teams that we expect to be the case in Trifecta, United, Luminosity, and Space Station. But they went toe-to-toe here with one of those top 4s, right?
Yeah, and in my eyes, with Allegiance struggling, Noble not doing much, and then in a Mighty Storm Mighty Storm is just a disaster. Gatekeepers has put themselves in that number 5 spot. Like they're right behind those top 4. At least in the standing to go. And Gatekeepers taking a game off of Trifecta is a little surprising, just because we thought Trifecta was the best team in NA, and we thought Gatekeepers would need a little bit of time to ramp up, and they're very much ramping up to that point. But just to see the two teams split, say that like the skill level between the two teams are not like astronomically huge.
Yeah. And I think that's a great sign for Gatekeepers, right? With how bad the others are looking, as you said, they're looking at an almost guaranteed wildcard spot. And even if that doesn't end up being the case, they're definitely looking at making top 6 in NA this split, I think. And if that happens, and they go forward into the next split with this roster, or with a roster similar to this one, potentially with a new mid, obviously, then we might be looking at a team that's gonna still improve as time goes on, and that's gonna become one of a force that is gonna be competing with the top 4 NA teams for a spot up there as well. So yeah, what else is there to say about this matchup between Gatekeepers and Trifecta?
I guess the only question that I have is, well, I don't really have the questions because we've already answered that. Gatekeepers looking like they're going to be the wild card team for Super Regionals, and Trifecta gets back on track against Space Station and LG, and they still have a game. They still have games against Allegiance, right? They still have games against Allegiance and in Noble. So Trifecta's in that. Trifecta could be a good spot with who's left on their schedule.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 4 and 5 in this set, and so or they should be 4 and 5 as it stands right now. They should be fourth and fifth. Trifecta could still probably move up. Gatekeepers has got a set against LG, but we're not. We're gonna have to wait on the rest of that. But as it sets right now, the top 5 in NA are pretty much solid, set in stone, with just positioning being what's left to decide. Like 1 through 5 in NA, we already know. Like it's pretty much clear at this point who the 5 best teams in NA are. Trifecta and Gatekeepers are 2 of those 5. So
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask where does this leave both teams, but I guess we've already answered that. They're top 5.
Yeah, well, depending on how Trifecta does against, or depending on how either of these teams perform against the guys that they've got left to play, especially LG probably, we could even be looking at Gatekeepers making 4th, right? That's the interesting part. If Trifecta doesn't pick up some steam soon, and they still have one set more left to play, and they're only 1 point behind Gatekeepers, of course, but still, if they don't pick up some steam and Gatekeepers manages to steal sets or just games off of the top NA teams that they've got left to face, we might be looking at them making it to Super Regionals, like actually, not just as the 5th best team in NA.
As one of the tournament teams and not the wildcard team.
Yeah, exactly. That would be interesting as well, right? And this could have this match could have big implications moving forward, depending on how both of those teams perform in their last sets. And again, Trifecta, they've got 4 sets left. They've got 2 sets left against opposition that they should beat realistically, while Gatekeepers only really has 1 left against Mighty Storm. And outside of that, they're going to be facing top teams. So depending on how these matches go, we're gonna have to see where either of those teams ends up placing in the end.
Yeah. Gatekeepers have games against LG, United, and a Mighty Storm, where Trifecta still has games against Allegiance, Noble, Luminosity, and Space Station. So
yeah,
there's a lot of, just like in EU, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But unlike EU, we pretty much know who the top 5 in NA are right now.
Yeah, so it's not going to matter too much anyway, right? We're going to have to wait and see, right? I just think that Trifecta is in a better position because, for one, they have 1 more set left to play, and they're facing two of the bottom 3 teams in Noble and Allegiance, whereas Gatekeepers are only facing 1, and then Gatekeepers are facing what is arguably the best team in NA right now in United, whereas Trifecta is facing 2 teams that are a step below there, right, in Luminosity and Space Station. So they are in a better position, even though they're 1 point behind Gatekeepers. I think they should easily be able to make up for that point, just because of the 2 bottom 3 teams that they're going to be facing, and the weaker other opposition as well. But we'll have to see. And yeah.
Well, I guess we can move on to the team you just said was the best team in NA right now. So
Yeah, United.
I'm completely in complete agreement with you. I mean, when we talked on Saturday about who we were going to predict to win these sets, you had them both. You had E United winning both sets 2-0. I kind of thought the situation might lead to E United losing one game because it's very difficult to play 4 games in a row at a pro league level. If you're playing casual games for fun, you're playing ranked games for fun, that's not hard. Like, putting 4 games in a row on a casual ranks, that's not hard. The mental preparation you have to make for pro league games to do that 4 times in a row, 4 straight games, I thought was going to be too much for United. But not only did they win that 4th game, they shut out a Mighty Storm 15-0.
Yeah, well, they're still a mighty Storm, right? They're arguably still the worst team in the league right now, even with all the changes that they've made. Still, it's very impressive, and we don't know when the sets were played, right? Because they're not played live, from what I know. They're played earlier in the day. If they sort of scheduled around the fact that United would have to play 2 sets in a day, they could have still given them some breaks in between for them to recover. The preparation's still going to be hard, but they were also in the advantageous position. Oh, that was a hard sentence. Where the 2 teams that they would be facing would be some of the worst teams in the league, right? Looking at Mighty Storm and Noble both. We've both called them. We've called both of them bottom 3 teams earlier, like a couple of minutes ago. So considering that, that's why I thought 2 2-0s would be the most likely result of these matches. And that's obviously what it ended up being, so I'm obviously a genius. Almost as much as Ron Chobert. I want to give a quick shout out to Ron Chobert, by the way, because on the analyst desk in the Gatekeepers Against Trifecta set, he predicted everything that would happen perfectly. So he is a mad genius, by the way. Shout outs to him.
Well, if you're going to gloat about yourself, I'm going to point out the fact that you did take rival to owing Valence as well.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I had rival and Valence splitting, so
didn't you
we're
have
even,
something else wrong, though?
No, you did though.
I
But
would really like to look at it, but I can't right now. Wait, let me check. If you had something else wrong that I didn't, I'm gonna call you out for it. You had... Ah, damn it.
we both had Dig to owing Energy. That
Yeah.
ended up being a split, but we were both wrong there.
Huh, wait, was that this week?
I think we had both had rival to owing Poppies, and we were wrong there.
Oh, you had Burrito. You had Burrito and Valence splitting, which didn't happen.
That
But
was
I
last
had
week.
Poppies and Elevate splitting, which also didn't happen.
Like I said, we're even.
And you had Gatekeepers playing 1-1 against Noble, but they 2-0'd. So I'm still in the lead. Booyah. Anyway,
Well,
let's move on.
congratulations. But hey, these 4 games, these 2 sets that E United dominated, much like what we just said again about the Gatekeepers and the Trifecta, it came down to just Cream and Benji in all 4 games dominating that side of the map.
Yeah.
Completely dominating that side. And realistically, watching all 4 of those games, Benji should have been first blooded 3 of the 4 games.
Yeah, like especially when you look at the one game that comes to mind where they were invaded at their speed. I think it was actually the last one against a Mighty Storm, and they just didn't die.
Like he never got first blooded in any of the games. He should have been first blooded in 3 of the 4 games. And I think Scream got first blood in 3 of the 4 games, and Benji picked up the other first blood in the 4th game. Like,
Yeah.
How does explain to me, like, how do you go from almost getting the first blood in 3 of the games to actually being the one picking up the first blood?
See, I think the good example again that I like to point out is the one against Mighty Storm, and I might even show this on screen real quick, so that people can see it. What you see there is him and Benji, that is Scream and Benji really working together to get out of the sticky situation they got themselves into, right? Because you see them at the speed. They're starting it up when the Mighty Storm guys come in to invade the speed. Then they back out. They use their utility to push people off, and Scream on a Wheelix actually roots. I think it was Finocane there, and builds up a distance between Finocane and Benji, which allows Benji to get out freely. And I think that's one example where you see how these two players work together well to protect each other. Because they were going in on Benji at that point, and because of what Scream did, because he noticed they're not going in on me, I'm fine here, they can turn it around. And then when Mighty Storm tries to go for the blue, they just get invaded in return, basically, on the enemy blue buff. And there, right, the reason someone dies there is because they have proper target focus, and because unlike the United side, Mighty Storm didn't have the tools to properly peel for the guy that died there, which was Sam.
Was that game 1 or game 2?
Game 2.
Game 2, yeah. So, again, just Benji and Scream running that side of the map is what allowed them to dominate all 4 games. And just looking at Scream's slash line, I'm going to point this out. Looking at Scream's slash line between the 4 games, he went 19-2.
Yeah. Just Scream things. Only died in 1 game, by the way.
Died twice in 1 game. In the other 3 games, he had a goose egg in the death column. And this was against a Noble team that looked good last week, even though, was against a Mighty Storm. And then a Mighty Storm that was almost a complete new roster.
Yeah.
And they're the bottom of the league, but just the players on each team. Maybe Mighty Storm not so much, because really Finocane and Medium are the only 2 with any kind of success in the SPL. But that tells you that E United's winning as a team better than everybody is playing as a team.
Yeah. See, I think the core takeaway from these games is that United was easily able to fulfill their due, or to do what was expected of them, right? These sets from the very beginning should have been a 4-0 to United, and it ended up being the case, which is a good sign. And the way in which they did it is also a good sign, right? If you can win games purely off of the aggression on one side of the map, while you still have a guy like a Panda Cat on the other side, being able to run games by himself as well.
That's another, that's a whole other point. Like, Panda Cat kind of gets lost this week in what Benji and Scream were able to do on that side of the map. But Panda Cat only died in 1 of the games as well.
Yeah.
Died one time in the 4 games, and then the other 3 games he had a goose egg. Like, and he was quiet. He wasn't. Even the casters didn't pay that much attention to that side of the map with what Benji and Scream were able to do on that on the solo side of the map. And so there's not a lot of weakness you can see in this E United team right now. And if Panda Cat's doing that and it's considered a quiet week for Panda Cat, E United is in a good position.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they definitely are.
They have 12 points in NA right now, and they have all the points that they have available to them right now. But with the team playing like they are, even if you take Panda Cat quiet week out of the equation, who is playing better than Benji and Scream on that side of the map?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think Space Station might have the potential to. The issue is just we've already seen them face United, so it's not going to matter. And Luminosity, I think they're always going to struggle just because Aquarius is not nearly as good as I would rate Benji right now. And then you look at the comparison between Mask and Scream, which could match up about evenly, right? Depending on what type of day they catch. And it's going to be hard for any team to put up the same performance on this side of the map, on the solo side of the map, if it's a direct solo laner and jungler matchup. The way I can see it happening is if they somehow switch it around the way that EU sometimes has done now, where they can potentially put the support in solo, right, for example, and somehow keep the map better controlled there, or where they can put the hunter in solo. I don't know. Weird things can happen. I think weird things are the one thing that could beat this United roster if you bring something out that they're not expecting. If you somehow manage to build up more pressure that way, if you run double warrior potentially, although they did beat them against Mighty Storm.
I think Scream has played a lot of Robin in that jungle before, so it's not just the other team playing the Warriors, but you gotta think United can play those double warrior comps as well.
Yeah, so the idea is, right, if you are facing United, you just pick 3 warriors, 1 in solo, 1 in jungle, 1 in support in the first phase, and you ban 4 others.
When I asked you the question, who is playing better than Scream and Benji on that side of the map, you focused on the North American side of things.
Oh.
And I understand what you're getting at there, but the only team in the entire league, NA and EU, that I think can match up against Scream and Benji right now is probably Dignitas with Kivo, Fred, Variety.
Well, I think all of the top 3 in NA and EU can do it, honestly. Especially with the type of more synergy that we're going to expect to see out of both Obey and Energy. Right, we have seen what Maniac and Adapting together can do, especially Adapting. We've seen him dominate games again. If that Adapting shows up against United at Worlds, I can imagine that Scream and Benji are going to struggle. If Maniac shows up, yeah.
If that's the case, Benji can dominate Maniac.
Not if Adapting's there.
If Adapting dominates Scream and Benji dominates Maniac, then that's a wash.
It's not 2 1v1s, right? It's a 2v2. In a 2v2.
But are you saying Adapting's better than both Scream and Benji combined, though? I don't
No,
know if
I'm
that's
saying
the case.
Adapting and Maniac combined, from what we've seen already and from the more synergy that they're even going to get, are going to be better than Benji and Scream combined.
I think it's a closer match than probably what you're making it out to be.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be a wash. I'm just saying they should have the upper hand in it still, even though it's going to be close.
And you're looking at the Obey matchup with Zelia and Captain Twig against Scream and Benji. Benji dominates Zelia 9 games out of 10, if you ask me. Scream and Captain Twig are kind of like very close, similar play styles to each other. So it's not, there's not a big gap there. And so Benji beating Zelia should put the favor in E United's camp.
See, I think neither of those players are going to allow you to snowball the game off of them, and that's sort of what I value in Twig, especially as a jungler. I think Twig is so smart at getting farm, whatever the circumstances are, that he's just going to be a factor late game, no matter what you do in the game before that. And if that is the case, and if Scream isn't allowed to snowball, it's going to be the late game where you have to compare the two. And if you compare them in the late game, I think Twig can have a bigger impact. And I think the matchup between Zelia and Benji could go similarly, especially if Zelia receives some more support from Twig than Benji might receive from Scream, because you also have to consider the mid lane, where the mid lane and the support synergy, right, where you're going to have Venenu and PBM match up against Pretty Prime and Emilzy, which I think is in favor of Pretty Prime and Emilzy. And in that case, if Scream has to help out more there than Twig does, Twig can help out more in solo. And in that case, you can get Zelia through to the late game as well. And if that is the case, you have both teams going into the late game at around an even level.
We've seen Benji 2v1 and come out on top more times than not. So leaving Benji alone, if Scream has to go help Venenu out in that matchup against Pretty Prime, like, if there's one solo laner on that side of the map that I don't care to leave alone, it's probably Benji.
Yeah, but the thing that I have is, Obey doesn't need to beat them in the early game. Okay, I think Obey can stalemate them in the early game and go into the late game and be better there, because overall in late game fights they should be the better team.
Well, let's not count out Venenu. Let's not give it straight up to Pretty Prime. Yeah, Pretty Prime's probably the better player, but from just the god picks that we've seen Venenu on and how he's played them, he's not played an easy god. Not really. Like, he's played Morgan multiple times, 3 times in fact this weekend, and he played Toph. Like, okay, yeah, Toph is kind of a pick him and fire the one ability, but Morgan is not an easy god, and Venenu has piloted her fairly well. And who else? Who else did he play a couple weeks? Nox. Yeah, Nox is not an easy god to play in the mid lane. She probably a lot easier to play in the support role than she is in the mid lane. But Venenu has shown enough that he's not a pushover, and that yes, I think Pretty Prime's probably the better player, but I don't think he dominates Venenu like you would probably expect him to.
Well,
and then Polar Bear Mike and the Emilzy matchup, that two supports that know the ins and outs of the game. It's like that's an even matchup.
I just can't see the 2v2 there again as being even, right? Because of the combination of Emilzy and Prime. Again, Prime is like, you can give credit to Venenu, of course. Venenu's not a bad mid. Prime is in contention for best mid in the world.
Yes, and that's why I would give Obey the slight edge.
I would give them much more than the slight edge in mid.
See, that's where we disagree, but
yeah.
then let's move on. Let's move on to the Hunter side. Ataraxia versus Pandacat.
Yeah. Well, Ataraxia.
Ataraxia is great, but with Pandacat playing like he is right now, Pandacat's looking like the best hunter in the world right now. Agree or disagree? Agree or disagree? So right now, just the head to head right now, with the way Panda Cat's playing, I take Panda Cat in that matchup.
Yeah,
So
probably.
the where Obey has the clear edge is in that 2v2, like you said, and I don't think it's as wide as you're making it out to be. Because I think Benji, 2v wanting, keeping Captain Twig and Zelia busy on that side of the map. If he can do it alone, which we've seen him do it. Let me point that out. We've seen him do it. Then you got to put Scream or Dorizio or whatever the hell you want to call him, whatever his name is going to be next week. You have to take that 2v2 and turn it into a 2v3. Because if Captain Twig is busy trying to help Zelia deal with Benji, and Scream is allowed to do whatever the hell he wants to in that mid lane, I mean, like Benji is a nightmare matchup for anybody. Outside of maybe Variety, Benji is a nightmare for any other solo laner.
Yeah.
So even if he doesn't have to have the help from Scream, even if he's not having the help from Scream, if that pulls Captain Twig over to deal with Benji, to help Zelia deal with Benji, and Scream can invade and put pressure on, just put pressure on Pretty Prime. That swings the match in E United's favor. It would be a good 5-game set, but I would take E United in that set just because how they're playing right now.
I can see where you're going with it. I just don't agree with it.
Adapting is the scary part in that matchup against in the matchup against Energy. Adapting is that scary part.
Yeah.
Because I do think Benji can handle Maniac.
Yeah, probably.
I don't think Benji can handle Maniac and Adapting.
Yeah.
I think he can handle Twig and Zelia better than he can Adapting and Maniac.
Yeah, probably.
And so that scares me a little. That the Energy matchup scares me a little as well. But
See, the entire reason.
In just a head-to-head matchup, though, just a straight head-to-head matchup, the team that matches up with them the best, probably Dignitas, because it's pretty even across the board. And Benji is not going to dominate Variety like he will every other solo laner in the league. Benji and Variety are 1 and 2, and you can really put 1A and 1B, and they're that close. They're both top solo laners right now.
Yeah. See, the entire reason why I'm worried for them against Obey is because I think Obey is a team that is better late game, and I think Obey as a team is going to stalemate the game if that's what they need to do. I think other teams are going to give them an opening by fighting them and by giving them chances to snowball, which I don't think Obey is going to give them.
Can't give Panda Cat Ho Yi. I'll tell you that right now. You can't give Panda Cat Ho Yi. Panda Cat gets Ho Yi in that matchup. It's like, sorry, that matchup's over.
Well, Ataraxia's just going to pick Chingwei. Doesn't matter if you poke him out, he's just going to come back and just.
Yeah, Wowie tried that too this weekend.
Yeah, but Wowie's not Ataraxia. You know?
I think if they don't, if people stop banning the meta against EU and just start banning out strong picks, their strong picks, if they banned out Ho Yi and they banned out Nemesis away from Scream, I think that you could see some of these teams be compete with E United, but for the most part, this split, Scream has gotten either Nemesis or Awelix and been all right with them. And Panda Cat has had Ho Yi more times than he has had all the other hunters combined. So
Yeah.
those are those two picks, the Nemesis and the Ho Yi. If I think if teams start focus banning those two gods away, I think E United comes E United comes down to the rest of the NA.
Yeah. And I can definitely see EU doing that, right? I can see them going for target bans because they are confident to play against basically every god there is. And that's that, yeah.
Right now, the dream matchup for finals at Worlds, E United and Dignitas.
Huh. Well, I am European, so my dream matchup is Dig against Obey or Energy. Or Rival, if they make it. Just Dig against any of the top 4 EU teams would be fine with me.
Let's say one team from NA and one team from EU.
Yeah, then obviously it's Dig against United, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
But I'm not willing to give you that.
You're not willing to give a chicken her egg back, so let's shut up.
Yeah, I really like eggs, man. They're good. Good source of proteins.
Let's go on to our MVPs.
Yeah, let's do it. I don't have mine prepared, so I'm gonna need to look them up. So just do yours first. I have a feeling who you're gonna give it to on the NA side, but on EU, I really do not.
EU was kind of hard because there wasn't too many top level matchups this week.
Yeah.
Either side, for most part, it was the top teams versus the bottom teams for this week. In the one set we saw that was two top teams, that was Energy versus Dig. Adapting struggled in game 1 but took off in game 2, and EU is hard to pick one this week, and I like what I saw from Arkle this week. I can't remember his slash lines, but Dig found 3 wins this week, and I liked what I saw from Arkle for the most part. He has established himself as one of the top hunters in EU, and Dig split with Energy, and then I believe 2-0 Elevate, and Arkle was a big part of that. So just by default, I'm just going to go ahead and give it to Arkle this week. NA is a little bit more clear than EU, but it comes down to 2 people, and they're both on E United. That's Scream or Panda Cat. And Scream got a lot more attention than Panda Cat did this week, even though Panda Cat only died once and Scream died twice. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Scream this week just because I thought he was more impactful and what he was able to do with Benji on that side of the map paired up. I think Scream is the clear MVP for this week. Arkle in EU and Scream in NA. So there's my MVPs for this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in a similar direction. As you said, I think Dig had by far the hardest week when you look at it, right? Both Elevate and Energy are teams that are in contention for one of those super regional spots, really. Whereas other teams like Energy themselves only faced the Poppies as a second team besides Dig. So I think the title for EU has got to go to one member of Dig. The one I chose now is QFred, because as a jungler he always has a massive impact. Obviously, I think it kind of favors getting the MVP trophy in general. And in the games that they won, right, he was really good in all of them, had a lot of impact. Was really good against Cherio in all of the sets they played. in both the games they played against Elevate, and was able to really match up with Adapting in both games, I thought, even though Adapting was hard carrying in the second one in the set they play against Energy, obviously. So yeah, I think Cubo had a bigger role in what made Dig win 3 games this week than Arkle did, as harsh as it may sound. And yeah, on the NA side, I absolutely agree with you. It's got to be one of Scream or Benji. And Scream, again, just looking back at that clip I showed, it's so nice to see what he did. Like that one little feather step to keep Sam away from Benji. It's beautiful. I've got to give it to him. Scream. So he's getting my MVP for NA.
We're in agreement with the teams. We both have a player from Dignitas, a player from E United. We just disagree on who the player from Dignitas was.
Yeah.
I think Cubo had a good week. I just think Arkle, from being what he was at the end or at the beginning of the year, where many people thought he was the weakest part of this roster, to see where he's at now and to have played as well as he did this weekend, despite them losing that second game and getting dominated by Energy, I could give it to Cubo for it. I could rightfully give it to Cubo for it. I just think we've seen it from Cubo pretty much all year, and Arkle is we didn't think. Like I said, nobody thought Arkle was going to be the strong or one of the better players on this team, and he's really turned into one of the better players on this team. So,
yeah, not to downplay his role in Dig's success, obviously, but I think he is not the biggest part of their success, and I don't think he was the biggest part this week either. So, I've got to give it to the biggest part of the most successful team in this week, sort of. So, and that would be Cubo, in my opinion. Even though Arkle has had more improvement than him overall, obviously. But yeah, we gotta move on quickly. There's one topic that we might want to discuss, and it is the entire A Mighty Storm shitstorm that happened, as I like to call it. Do we really want to touch that powder keg?
Well, I will say this: I read Hi-Res Cooper response. I read Plasma's response. From what I can tell, Vivian is a shitty teammate. Like really shitty teammate. And I feel bad for the new roster that the Mighty Storm has. Players like Bedium and players like Fine OK, who have proven their ability to play in the SPL on this SPL level. To have somebody like Vivian as your team captain, not be able to do anything about it, that's kind of a shitty situation for just those two to be in.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that the entirety of the NIC scene could do about it, right? Which would just be to boycott Vivian, so he would be unable to field a team that Hi-Res would consider to be valid for the SPL, right? And at that point, Vivian would have to give up the spot.
Well, reading Plasma's tweet longer, the he as a Wulp and yes, a Kill of the Hun. I don't know if Ghost had anything to do with this, or if this was something that was going on when Ghost was a part of the team. That much wasn't clear. But
no, it's
they
approached.
I don't know how to say the name of the organization. Is it ERA or is it ERA?
I have no idea.
But yeah, they approached that organization thinking that if the organization takes over, they can majority vote kick Vivian off the team.
Yeah, But Vivian, obviously, as the captain, can veto the entire thing, the entire acquisition with the organization. So that's what he did to sort of preserve his own power. See, the entire thing that basically happened relies on Vivian getting the captain spot, which is what I think never should have happened. Like, if you... So the main criticism people had, or the main criticism Plasma had, and Plasma and the teammates, was that they thought Vivian was the worst player on the team. I'm not sure if I would agree with that, honestly. But if you think that, you should have never given that guy the captain spot. You do not give the captain spot to the worst player on your team.
I don't know if they said he was the worst player on the team. I think what they said was he was the one with the worst attitude on the team. But your point still sticks the same. If that's the case, why am I even make him captain?
Yeah. That is the issue I have with it. That's where their fault lies. That's the only place where their fault lies, is giving him captain spot. You do not give captain spot to a guy who is either the worst player on your team, or even if he isn't, even if you don't consider him to be, you do not give it to the guy who is toxic. That's a shit idea. And it should have never been done. And that is how they essentially fucked themselves, by allowing him, or by putting him into a position where he can fuck them. To be a bit vulgar about it. And
they really, by making him captain, they really shit the bed. Like, if you're just giving it to the best player on the team, then Uzi should have been the captain. If you're giving it to the role that has the most impact on the game, Plasma should have been captain. I don't see, because Vivian was neither the best player on the team, nor was he in, yes, support is one of the positions that gets a view of one of the major views of the map, but the jungle has the more, he's the more prevalent on the map. So if you're giving the captain to the more important role, jungle is going to get it over support. Support maybe over everybody else on the team, but jungle will be just is a bigger position than support is, really.
Yeah. So I've got a quote for you, by the way, real quick. That was set by them in Plasma's Twitter longer. But if you ask anyone who had sat in our scrims before this point, then the players that were there named, they will tell you the same thing the four of us had been discussing for a while. That his attitude, and his referring to Vivian, of course, and gameplay were the biggest factor in why we were losing. That to me says they considered him to be the worst player on their team. That's what I meant with that.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. And yeah. I will say this. I think this is the last thing we need to say. Even after these roster changes, even though Mighty Storm has won one game, Vivian has looked like utter shit. Like,
yeah,
really bad. Like, not even, even the roster changes did not make him look any better.
Yeah, like, it made him look worse.
Now that we know his attitude and what happened in this, if I were a player in the SPL, if I were somebody that was in a position of power on the team, if we had a pick between Vivian and literally any other player in the league, like, any player in Challenger Cup, like, I would choose the Challenger Cup player over Vivian. Give me Shadowq back. I'll take Shadowq.
Wow, that's okay. That coming out of your mouth is quite something, to be honest.
Vivian, there is no scenario that you can tell me that Vivian comes out of this looking good.
No, absolutely not. Again, I was gonna say, the roster changes made him look even worse, because I think the new roster he brought in is better than the old one. And individually, they're all better than the old players, except maybe FineOK and Uzi. But
FineOK and Uzi are similar. Like, There's not a drop there on the solo lane side of the map. Now everybody else on the team is definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, and the point is then he looks even worse, right, Vivian? Because now he's got a better roster around him, but he himself has not improved at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, shoutouts to Payne. I think he tweeted out, "I will never understand why people will replace 4 of their players."
In all fairness to Payne, he wanted to keep Panda Cat over Video, but Panda Cat had like outside things, so he picked up Video. And Benji was already on that list from the roster carrots, as you've already pointed out. He didn't actually replace 4 members; he replaced 3 members.
Still think it's fucking hilarious.
Payne is. I love having Payne in the SPL. Even if the games are not any better, like just Payne's personality is just good to have in the SPL.
Yeah. Also, before we wrap this topic up as well, I want to give a quick shout out to Hi-Rez as well. So, if you haven't heard, they changed one rule in the entire rulebook, which said that if you were roster locked to an SPL team, which you were after playing 4 games 4-1, you would no longer be able to play in the Challenger Cup. That is no longer the case. So at least now, even if they like, obviously it still sucks for the 4 players because they've been kicked from the SPL essentially, but at least now they can go play in the Challenger Cup. So shoutouts to Hi-Rez for that.
Well, one good thing came out of this.
Yeah. The rule never made any sense anyway, right? Why would you prevent poaching from Challenger Cup teams of SPL teams?
Well, I don't think the rule was in position to poach Challenger Cup teams. I think it was to keep these SPL players that were locked to the rosters in the SPL from going down to play for a Challenger Cup team.
Yeah, but why? Why would they not be allowed to do that?
That's why I question the ruling, because why would you not let that do it? But I don't think it was to keep SPL teams from poaching Challenger Cup players.
No, I meant the opposite, right? To prevent Challenger Cup teams from poaching SPL players, because why would anyone be able to do that? Even wouldn't make sense.
Why would anybody in SPL want to go down to the Challenger Cup?
Yeah, exactly. Unless you were picked from a team, which is why the rule is now gone. Thank you, Hi-Rez.
If this is the scenario, if this scenario is not the case, if Vivian doesn't do this, then why would anybody from that old Mighty Storm roster want to go down? Because you're not getting paid in the Challenger.
I know why.
As much as
I know why. Okay, listen to me.
That rule. That rule didn't make sense. I completely.
Listen to me.
Well, let's wrap this thing up.
Wait, give me a second. I want to say one thing. The reason why you would do it is because Vivian is an ass, and we won't be working with him again.
That's true.
So yeah, let's wrap it up. Okay,
After this split, Vivian, in my opinion, doesn't make it back into the SPL.
Probably not, yeah. Especially because it's only going to be 6 spots after the split, so... Yeah, highlight matches for week 4, just real quick before you have to go, because I know you have to go pretty soon. The ones we're looking forward to, I'm just going to list them down and say a sentence about them. Energy against Obey. We said probably top 2 and top 3 team in EU right now, so obviously a matchup to look forward to. LG against Trifecta. We said Trifecta still has a chance of getting one of those second or third spot in NA, and LG is competing for them as well, so obviously a great matchup to watch. Elevate against Rival is going to pretty much define or play a huge role in who manages to go to Super Regionals directly out of those 2 teams in EU, and Gatekeepers against LG. Again, we saw Gatekeepers match up against Trifecta this week. Let's see how they match up against LG, who is probably around the same level as Trifecta. Was that good?
Yes, and I want to say one last thing about the LG Gatekeepers thing. If Gatekeepers can somehow find a split, or by some miracle end up 2-0ing LG, then that most likely puts Gatekeepers in that number 4 spot. Whether Trifecta or LG is on the outside, either one of those two teams are on the outside. I think if Gatekeepers can find a win over LG, even if, like I said, even if it's just a split, I think Gatekeepers have a good shot, probably the best shot at making that number 4 spot.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we can end the show now, right? Do we have any shoutouts you want to give?
I do not. I mean, I want to give out one shout out, and that's to Big Man Tings for introducing me to the Jean Kui support. I didn't think it was going to work, and it didn't work in the SPL, but I've played it 3 times, and I've won all 3 matches. Shout out to Big Jean Kui. I'm going to get John Quinn Diamond just by playing him in support row.
Yeah, you do you, man. Good luck with that. So yeah, with all that said, that was it from the Tuesday Night Smite podcast for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a like or whatever it is on whatever platform it is, on whatever platform you were watching it on or listening to it on. If you want to be notified when new episodes come out, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, or you can follow us on SoundCloud, whether you prefer it in audio only or in video version. And yeah, thank you all for joining us this week. Thank you, Zabo, for being here. Follow us on Twitter, by the way, at Tuesday Night Smite. It's not in here for some reason. And yeah, as always, good night, good Smite.